afternoon, everyone. I'm Kate, the Director of News Partnerships for APAC at Google. We know the industry is buzzing about what's to come in a world without third-party cookies. You've probably heard that Google, led by the Chrome and Android teams, is working on the Privacy Sandbox initiative to create technologies that both protect people's privacy online and give companies and developers tools to build thriving digital businesses. Given our efforts to support the publisher ecosystem in adopting change, we want to take this opportunity to connect and hear firsthand from the Privacy Sandbox team about the path to cookie deprecation in 2024. Today, you will hear about a number of new tools and techniques that can be adopted to have real and immediate impact for your businesses as you continue to take important steps in the transformational journey towards a more privacy-centric web. But first, let's start with some context. Billions of people around the world rely on access to information on sites and apps. To provide this resource for free without relying on intrusive tracking, publishers and developers need privacy-enhancing alternatives for their key business needs, including serving relevant content and ads. A 2022 global research study showed that 80% of users are concerned about their online privacy. And 85% want brands to invest in more private technologies. It's clear that more than ever, people expect companies to respect how their data is used and keep their information private. The tide is turning. And it's important to remember how these issues are viewed both by consumers and by regulators. In the last few years, consumer consciousness about privacy has reached its tipping point. Consumers fear sharing data, and they are turning to platforms that promise greater privacy. Meanwhile, regulators globally are weighing into these concerns. For example, we've seen the data privacy laws in Europe that are challenging the foundations of advertising, and we've seen privacy regulations expand across other regions, like the Asia Pacific. The question for our industry is, how do we transition into a sustainable, durable privacy future? As we look at the evolving landscape, it's clear that the increased priority on privacy and limiting user data sharing is not a temporary fad. It represents a fundamental shift in how people and society expect online experiences to protect their privacy. It's clear that the current system of online advertising, which was built on legacy technologies developed decades ago, like third-party cookies, is now falling short of users' expectations. And it's imperative that as an industry, we respond to this by developing durable products with privacy at their core, powered by innovative technology that enables businesses to succeed online. So let me introduce you to Kunal Guha and the Privacy Sandbox team to help demystify the Privacy Sandbox and how it's going to support both users and businesses in the journey towards a more private internet.
Thank you, Kate. Hello, everyone. My name is Kunal Guha, and I'm the Director of Privacy Partnerships for Asia Pacific. Our team's role is to work closely with product and engineering as we're designing these new innovations for privacy-preserving technologies at the level of Chrome as well as Android. And then we take these technologies and we work with partners such as yourself in the testing and then eventually the large-scale rollout across your businesses. Let's get to it. So what did we speak about in terms of building for privacy-first future? The reason why we're building this is because we are solving for an age-old technology that has existed for nearly 30 years. In the way in which identifiers have tracked user behaviors, as well as created certain forms of nefarious activities such as covert tracking and fingerprinting. And our job is to ensure that at the root level, we're protecting user privacy by default. In a time series, when the cookie launched in 1994, an entire generation or 3 generations of technologies built on the internet, both on the web as well as on mobile devices, have highly depended on identifiers of different sorts, not just for advertising, but equally also for every type of infrastructure connectivity that has existed in the web. In 2019, the industry overall began to start working on what we call privacy enhancing technologies, or PETs, PETS. Apple was the first to be able to go out to market and say, we are going to stop the third-party cookie, and then eventually stop the advertising ID for mobiles as well. However, when that was done, the realization of the industry was we didn't have the infrastructure for what this migration needed to be. When Google, through Chrome, announced the Privacy Sandbox initiative in 2019, our goal was to not just phase out identifiers, but then also build the infrastructure layer that could help with this migration into a privacy-first future, and then define the internet for the next 10, 20, 30 years plus. So what is the goal of Privacy Sandbox? Our goal is to ensure that we're keeping user activity private on the internet, but then equally ensuring that the internet continues to be free and transparent. It is a paradigm shift. We are moving from a world that has been highly dependent on a variety of different identifiers, and we are migrating this entire infrastructure into a world of technologies built through APIs that protect user privacy by default and ensures that you can continue to run the transactions towards a digital economy. So the paradigm for us has been driven through a series of APIs that we have been testing and trialing since 2019, 2020. On the top, where you see relevance and measurement, these are what are the ads use cases. How can we ensure that businesses and advertisers and the ad tech layer in between, who are highly dependent on running an ads-based revenue model, they continue to be able to do that across both the mobile as well as the web. Equally important are what we call the general privacy APIs. This ensures the safety and integrity of the internet at the infrastructure level. And it ensures that we are protecting users from cross-site targeting, from covert trackability or traceability as well, and ensuring that we're fighting against fraud and spam. There are over 20 different technologies and APIs that we've been building with privacy enhancing technologies at the core. So what is this dichotomy for us? On the one hand, we need to ensure that the future of the internet is user privacy by default. And on the other hand, there's trillions of dollars in a digital economy that needs to continue to thrive. And we build that infrastructure layer at the platform level. It is extremely important for us as an entire ecosystem to come together and work together so that we can ensure, number one, paramount, that the internet continues to be safer for people, users, you and I as users. Number two, publishers and app developers, businesses such as yours, that you are able to continue to deliver all of the use cases and experiences that you provide to your user groups without disruption. Number three, we need to ensure that the businesses that are dependent on advertising and the technologies that support them, the ad tech, have the tools necessary to be able to continue to drive those use cases. And finally, for all businesses and all advertisers, they're able to reach users and they're able to drive transactions, but without having the risk of leakages of personal data. And all of this needs to happen in close consultation and partnership with regulators. We work with regulators globally and across the Asia Pacific markets to ensure that they are also fully aware with the technologies and the learnings that we're providing. We have always stood by the fact that we need an infrastructure layer. And that's exactly what Privacy Sandbox is. It is the pillar and the foundational stone. But businesses such as yourself, in order to drive both optimization and monetization, Privacy Sandbox becomes one core of a variety of other instances that you need to work towards. Number one, and the most primary one, being your own first-party data, which is consented 100%. How do you leverage Privacy Sandbox plus your first-party data? And then after that, all of the contextual signals that you see on your properties. That ensures that the internet is private and safe. And on the other hand, how can we ensure that ads as well as digital experiences continue to thrive? That is through the power and imagination of AI and all of the optimizations that you're building on your platforms, whether that be through segmentation and cohorts, whether that be through the way in which you can drive optimized bidding, all the way to more predictive analytics. When we set off with the Privacy Sandbox initiative, one of the core tenets of ours was that this is going to be 100% open source, and we will canvas and partner with members of the ecosystem globally. And we've been doing this for the last 3 to 4 years. We have, in all of our API development, which is all available at GitHub, we have welcomed contributions from companies, governments, institutions, industry bodies, and we've collated a series of feedback that have allowed us to be able to make the APIs better and now stable. These are just a few logos of all of the partners that we've worked with, but this has been our staunch commitment, which is how can we reach out in a true open source manner, gather feedback, get trial learnings, and be able to improve the APIs before they're ready for the public. So high-level timelines. We have gotten the question before, which is, Google and Chrome, you all declared that the third-party cookie was going to deprecate in 2019, and you all have delayed it twice. How do we know that it's not going to get delayed again? And that's a fair question and even criticism. So there are 3 key signals that we have made to the industry that give us the confidence that we're ready. Number one is the APIs that I just shared at a high level. They are all now generally available as of August of this year. So any of you all and your technology teams can access it and begin to test and trial, and we highly recommend that. Number 2 is in January of 2024, we will begin to phase out 1% of the third-party cookie. Why are we doing this? So that we can ensure that all companies are able to test in a small cohort level if any part of their web domain is going to be triggered with errors. And then they have the time necessary, plus the tooling, to be able to build the right infrastructure in, or ensure you have the right tech partners in the middle so that you are fully privacy compliant. And finally, starting in Q3 of 2024, after close consultation with the CMA authorities, we will begin to start phasing out the third-party cookie. That phase-out period will also be roughly 2 to 3 months, because we want to ensure that the internet is not breaking, and we do the phased approach in a very clear risk-mitigated manner. So what does this all mean for you and your businesses? We essentially have less than 100 days before we start phasing out the 1%. The third-party cookie, when it deprecates, will deprecate across every single user that uses the Chrome browser. That's 100% of that audience. And you have 0 days to wait before you're able to start actually trialing, testing, and preparing. And we encourage you through the Privacy Sandbox initiative to take the first steps with us. With that, I want to introduce you to my colleague, Madeline, who's going to start sharing with you the technologies, the Privacy Sandbox APIs, with more detail and go through both the versions for the ads APIs as well as the general privacy APIs. Madeline, over to you.
Thank you, Kunal. In this section, I will be covering 3 key topics. Firstly, I will briefly introduce the innovative privacy-enhancing technologies that enable the Privacy Sandbox. Then, I will cover new technologies that address advertising use cases and preserve trust and usability for a private web. Finally, I will take you through the tangible actions you and your teams can take right now as we count down to third-party cookie phase-out. So let's jump in. Hopefully, we're helping to demystify a few questions you might have had at the beginning of this session. Let's take a closer look at how the Privacy Sandbox works. Privacy-enhancing technologies, or PETs, are fundamental to this initiative. You may remember Kate speaking about the context of the evolving privacy landscape, including innovation as a key driver. Privacy-enhancing technologies, PETs, demonstrate how innovation can be applied in new and exciting ways to help solve for privacy use cases and potentially help to uncover new opportunities for a more private web. For example, we have spoken about the cookie challenge, where, in a more privacy-centric web, we seek to limit the ability to re-identify a user across different sites. There is a technique called differential privacy, which obfuscates or hides the original data by adding statistical noise to the dataset to maintain both privacy and accuracy. We are now delivering improved user settings and controls so people can make more meaningful choices about their data usage via these new Privacy Sandbox technologies. Most of the Privacy Sandbox APIs employ multiple PETs in combination to protect and minimize the collection of user data. As you will have heard from Kunal, the Privacy Sandbox consists of over 20 APIs that address a broad range of key ecosystem use cases that today rely on cross-site identifiers like third-party cookies. All of these APIs are designed with privacy at the core and utilize the latest in privacy-enhancing technologies to protect user data. You may be interested to know that this includes the use of technologies like data aggregation, differential privacy, data noising, on-device processing, and trusted execution environments, a few of the PETs I mentioned previously. Because of its design, Privacy Sandbox doesn't rely on cross-site user identifiers and limits sharing of user data, which is a big step forward for user privacy. So let's dive a little bit deeper into a few of these new technologies. When we think about new advertising technologies, think of it as technologies that support relevance use cases and technologies that support measurement use cases. And because they use privacy-enhancing technologies, we can enable these advertising use cases without user identifiers. So what do I mean by this? The Topics API is designed to preserve privacy while showing relevant content and ads. It provides a high-level signal of a user's interest based on recent browsing history to help sites and apps serve relevant ads. There are 2 main parts to Topics. First, the API labels each website from a set of recognizable high-level topics. For example, the browser would match a sports website with the topic sports. Then the browser collects a few of the most frequent topics associated with the websites a user has visited. These topics are then shared, 1 new topic per week, with the sites a user visits to help advertisers show users more relevant ads without needing to know the specific sites the user has visited. Users will also be able to see the topics and remove any they don't like, or disable them completely. As we move further down the funnel, performance will continue to play an important role in delivering on business goals. The Protected Audience API, formerly known as Fledge API, is a privacy sandbox proposal to serve custom audiences and remarketing use cases designed so third parties cannot track user browsing behavior across sites. So today, if you visit a website, third-party cookies can be used to show you relevant ads later on. But a lot of your browsing history is exposed and too much of your information can be collected by third parties. With protected audience, advertising technology companies can show the user ads, but information about the user's browsing stays private. On mobile apps, the concept is the same. With protected audience, an ad tech can show the user ads, but information about the user's app activity stays private. Now, the Attribution Reporting API helps advertisers measure the performance of their online ads without needing to track people's activity across websites and apps. So imagine you're browsing the morning news and you see an ad for a pair of headphones that are on sale. You click on that ad to take a closer look. An ad tech company can use attribution reporting to let an advertiser know that a purchase occurred, but keeps your individual browsing or app activity private, using methods like encryption, time delays, secure servers, and data aggregation and randomization. The advertiser can see which of their ads was most effective without individual identifiers being used in the process. For those interested in understanding how the relevance and measurement APIs work in more technical detail, stay tuned for our next session. Digital advertising is key to maintaining the free and open web we all know today. And beyond advertising purposes, developers currently use third-party cookies to provide a relevant web experience. But cookies and some other signals were not designed with privacy in mind, allowing companies to track users across sites, and this approach no longer meets users' expectations. We need to ensure that we are enabling the legitimate use cases of internet experiences to continue. And at the same time, we are building new technologies to help limit covert tracking across mobile and web. So what does this involve? We discussed from the onset that Privacy Sandbox is focused on raising the bar for user privacy. This is why we are also seeking to strengthen cross-site privacy boundaries and prevent covert tracking by designing several non-advertising APIs that can be used beyond advertising use cases. And since today's webinar is focused on the publisher community, let's discuss some of the new APIs that are likely to be the most relevant to publishers, specifically CHIPS API, Related Website Sets API, and User Agent Client Hints API. CHIPS API helps to use embedded external service functionality by partitioning it on the site. The Related Website Sets API is designed to minimize disruptions to specific user-facing features once Chrome starts limiting access to third-party cookies by default. Our goal is to allow users to browse the web with minimal disruption while still upholding the goals of the Privacy Sandbox. User Agent Client Hints API securely retrieves information in the form of a separate request sent, instead of the full user agent string, which contains information that could potentially be used for fingerprinting. Again, these are just a few examples of helpful tools that you can add to your toolkit to assist with more privacy-centric digital experiences. Many of the Privacy Sandbox APIs work well together. For example, you may find that Related Website Sets does not meet all of your use cases, and we encourage you to consider other APIs that may be useful across your brands. As a reminder, Related Website Sets is not intended as an ad solution, and so we encourage developers to explore ads-related use cases using topics, protected audiences, and attribution reporting APIs. As Kunal mentioned earlier, Privacy Sandbox technologies are not a standalone solution. It is just one of a number of building blocks. So we encourage you to test, learn, and share your feedback so we can develop more insights for the publisher community. But let's take a moment to come back to the user perspective. It is important to consider the user controls as part of the overall digital customer experience. We've also rolled out new ad privacy controls in Chrome that allow people to manage how the privacy sandbox technologies may be used to deliver the ads they see. These controls allow users to tailor their experiences by customizing what ad topics they are interested in, what relevance and measurement APIs they want enabled, and more. You can view these controls by visiting Settings, Privacy and Security, Ad Privacy Controls in Chrome, and can find additional information about the new ads privacy features on our Help Centre. Let's talk about readiness. So, there are steps that publishers can take now, next, and later to prepare for third-party cookie deprecation. Now, in 2023, it's time to learn and assess. SSPs are working with Chrome to test the functionality of new privacy-enhancing technologies, so most publishers will not be able to test these technologies directly in live marketing campaigns. However, we encourage publishers to ask SSPs about their testing plans and discuss their individual needs, objectives, and use cases. This is the best way to influence investment in testing and refining these technologies in the near term until they are available within SSP selling platforms. You can stay up to speed on Privacy Sandbox updates with our monthly developer blog and quarterly ecosystem update. Now is also a good time to assess your own use of third-party cookies across your domains and websites. You may wish to involve your privacy or ad ops, architecture and development teams, who are likely to be the ones to perform and provide advice on this assessment. Now, in terms of what comes next, the second half of 2023, we expect some SSPs will enable testing of Privacy Sandbox technologies within their selling platform. Your SSP will notify you when testing is made available, and Chrome encourages you to participate if offered the chance. Publishers may need to consider whether the targeting tactics enabled by Privacy Sandbox are relevant to their goals. Some SSPs may also require advertisers to update tags to be compatible with the new privacy-enhancing technologies. To support collective knowledge around these technologies, we encourage you to share learnings, including with other publishers, your SSP partners, and Chrome. As for later, as we approach 2024 and beyond, we anticipate marketers will optimize and develop best practices based on shared ecosystem learnings as we all continue to raise the bar for user privacy. Let's talk about how to share feedback and learnings. The Privacy Sandbox team has created a public GitHub list to facilitate testing coordination between different web stakeholders. This is a great way to declare your interest in being considered for future ad tech testing, or perhaps to showcase your learnings for the related website sets or Chips API, where you have directly integrated these technologies. There's also an opportunity to be involved in end-to-end scaled testing with existing and/or upcoming testers, even if you are not in the role of an integrator like an SSP. If this is of interest to you and your teams, you may wish to review the GitHub tester list for the API's topics, protected audience, and attribution reporting. In these lists, you will be able to see what role testers play, as well as any planned timeframes for testing, links to testing plans, key learning, and contact information. But there are two things that you can do today to get ready if you think the Privacy Sandbox technologies may be a useful tool for your toolkit. Firstly, assess the third-party cookie relationships on all web domains so that your technical teams can consider integrating the privacy APIs, such as related website sets or chips, into your broader readiness plans. And two, if you have an ads-based business model, partner with your ad tech providers to understand their roadmap and work with them to incorporate your key use cases into their testing and readiness plans. From an Android mobile apps perspective, there's no immediate action to take, but please stay tuned as we will be sharing more information at a later stage. I do hope this approach to readiness has provided some helpful guiding principles. And now I'm very excited to introduce my colleague, Arpit, who will now host a fireside chat with our VIP guest speaker, whose organisation has brought these ideas to life as part of their own readiness journey as a publisher. So Arpit, over to you.
Thank you, Maddie. It was a great session. Hi, everyone. I'm Arpit Vishwakarma from the Privacy Partnerships team at Google, based in India. It is my great pleasure to introduce Ashish Jaiswal, CTO of Times Internet, to share insights from their journey on Privacy Sandbox. A very warm welcome, Ashish.
Thank you, Arpit.
And may I request you to introduce Times Internet to our audience?
Sure. Times Internet is the largest Indian internet network and the digital venture of the Times of India Group, which is India's largest media and entertainment group. Times Internet reaches over 580 million unique visitors monthly across news, entertainment, sports, local, e-commerce, classifieds, and local partnerships, and many more.
Thank you, Ashish. I'm sure the experiences and insights of Times Internet will really help our publishing community. So let's move on to the first thing I would like your insights on. In the Times Internet's executive meetings, what were the discussion points in evaluating the Privacy Sandbox technologies? And what was your role as a CTO?
In our exit meetings, the discussion points for assessing Privacy Sandbox technologies were primarily focused around two key areas: user experience and revenue and monetization. On the user experience front, the discussion was primarily around maintaining and enhancing user engagement, considering personalized experience in a cookieless environments, understanding the potential impact on our user, and also assessing the extent to which the current business models rely on third-party cookies. Since we own multiple sites across many verticals, use cases like single sign-on are critical for us for offering a frictionless experience and for serving the right content and product to our users. We discussed our readiness for third-party cookie phase-out, given the multiple systems and tech stack we use internally, and the areas where Privacy Sandbox APIs can help us solve the breaking use cases. Our emphasis has always been on privacy and data protection for our users, as it's an important concern, and we need to ensure that we are compliant with evolving privacy regulations and user expectations. On the revenue front, we discussed the potential impact of third-party cookie phase-out on revenue and the priorities to mitigate that. We discussed our first-party data strategy, how we can strengthen our data collection and management, strategies for obtaining user consent, data collection methods, data protection, and how related website sets and FedCM can help us solve the breaking use cases. My role as a CTO was to evaluate these technologies along with and including Privacy Sandbox APIs and help the leadership make a decision on which of ones to start with, when to participate, and what kind of team and bandwidth we will need to dedicate for that.
That's great, Ashish. I love the framework of focusing on the user experience and also on revenue and monetization. And if I may ask you, how did you identify and prioritize which use cases you want to test out first and which ones to wait for? Do these depend upon the revenue they drive?
Yes, I think the decision was primarily based on our user-centric approach. Our primary motivation was to put the privacy and user experience at the forefront of our digital strategy. We recognized that the third-party cookies were becoming increasingly outdated and privacy invasive, and we wanted to align with the changing expectations of our users. From that perspective, we started looking into the Privacy Sandbox APIs like UACH, FedCM, related web standards, and all that. Since these APIs align with our commitment to user-centric data handling, and they help us deliver more transparent and privacy-friendly experience. So that was the triggering point for starting with these APIs. These APIs also solve our critical use cases like single sign-on, user recommendations, first-party data collection in a privacy-preserving way, and they directly impact our product and user experience. Sign-in user and user engagement also drive and impact our revenue directly and indirectly as well, as it allows us to offer add-on services and new products to our most loyal users. So in a way, prioritizing them was also linked to a revenue also.
This is very interesting how user experience is linked with loyal users, and hence every API and use case is linked with the revenue as well. With that, I'll move on to the next one, and I would like to ask you, how prepared do you think Times Internet is to sustain your users' experience in a third-party cookieless world? And what are your immediate and next focus areas?
Let me try to answer that in two parts. Our readiness from our user experience perspective, I think we are 60-70% there. We have made a good progress this year. This includes things like ensuring seamless logins of our users across sites, our data collection strategies in a user privacy preserving way, and how we can offer them right content, personalized content and products and services. For that, we have tested out APIs like FedCM and RWS, as we already said. And we have rolled out a couple of them on production environments. Some are in testing phase, and we feel pretty good there. From our readiness on the ad side, I would say we are still in the early stage, given the multiple partners involved here. And we are still trying to understand with the community and the partners various strategies everybody's trying to follow or work upon. We are going through the Privacy Sandbox APIs for ads also, and also working with our ad partners to see what changes might be needed across ad ecosystem and what we need to do from our side.
Yeah, I love that framing again. I think, as you mentioned, ad side involves many other partners. So thank you for that perspective, Ashish. And now I would like to ask you, what was the team structure that you built to test and assess the new technologies and APIs? Did you start small or created an internal task force on privacy initiatives?
From a team structure perspective, I think luckily the way our product and tech teams are organized, we didn't have to change much. It was not a challenge for us to plan out the assessment and testing for the APIs to start with. Our teams are kind of structured in a way that we have a central tech team which is owning the identity and sign-on across all our sites. So they have the responsibility to solve for the sign-in use cases, which is FedCM, RWS, etc. We have our ads team who is responsible for all the ads related use cases. They work with the publishing teams closely, and their focus is to look into those use cases and assess the different technologies around that. So they own the responsibilities for figuring out and understanding the ads use cases. Then we have our publishing and content tech teams who are responsible for the primary user experience, serving the right content and products and services. They own the responsibilities for right recommendation, user personalization, etc. and etc. So in a way, the responsibilities are logically separated within our teams, and hence it made easier for us to assign them right responsibilities. Initially, we started small. Our central tech team started assessing FedCM and FPS, which is RWS now. And we feel good that we have already rolled out FedCM in a limited way across our sites as well. Though obviously we'll assess the impact and changes starting January 1st when the 1% cookie phase out will start happening. Our publishing team have now got a little advanced, and they are little deep into understanding the use cases which can break, and they are in the, I would say, in the advanced phase of figuring out APIs and changes they need to do from their side. As I said earlier, our ads team are now in the phase where they have started looking into the APIs related to ads, working with partners as well to try and assess the ecosystem. This is where we are early in the cycle, I would say.
Thank you, Ashish. Appreciate you sharing your journey with us and helping to inspire the publishing ecosystem.
Thank you, Arpit.
Okay, Kunal, I'll hand over to you now to provide us with a wrap of today's session.
Thank you, Ashish and Arpit. It's insights like these that bring meaning into the Privacy Sandbox initiative, and for you to be able to share how your journey has been, and hope that inspires all of our audiences to begin their journeys as well. So I'm going to do a summary of our webinar number 1, and most importantly, key outtakes and actions for you all as a result. Number 1, the third-party deprecation, cookie deprecation, will start with 1%, phase out in January of 24, and the beginning of the third-party cookie full deprecation starting in Q3 of 2024. For y'all, we recommend that please begin to start auditing your properties. We have the tooling that's available to help you so that you can identify what parts of the critical infrastructure of your domains are dependent still on the third-party cookie and how you can migrate out of that so that you have continuity for your business. Number 2, Privacy Sandbox is a building block. It's meant to be used in conjunction with your consented first-party data, as well as other contextual signals that you see on your properties. Our recommendation is within your technology and data strategy teams, build that cohesive data strategy that brings it all together across your properties. Number 3, the privacy APIs. That ensures that we will maintain the integrity of the privacy-first internet for all users. And for you, that means upgrading your site domains and the relationships that you have with multi-domains, as well as with any other third-party technologies that you're leveraging. Ensure that you have the right frameworks and foundational APIs through the general privacy APIs that we've created. Test them out, trial them in advance. And finally, for all of you all who are dependent on an ads-based economy as well, the advertising APIs will ensure that every ad trigger use case continues to thrive. And for that, please partner with your ad tech providers. Ask them the questions. Are they prepared for the third-party cookie deprecation? Are they testing and trialing the apps with Chrome? And ensure that you are able to test that with your supply side traffic that you generate and be able to begin to measure it. The rubber hits the road in January when we start phasing out the 1%, where you can actually do live traffic tests and trials. We recommend that you do it as soon as possible so that you and your businesses are well prepared for when the third-party cookie finally deprecates. In conclusion, we have less than 100 days to go before we begin to phase out the 1%. This rollout will impact 100% of the Chrome browsers globally and across all of our markets and across all of your users. And you have 0 days to wait before you can get started on this journey with us. We have a wealth of information for you. It's all available in the open domain between privacysandbox.com, developer.chrome.com, and for Android, developer.android.com. We highly recommend that you share this with your technology teams, and we are here for you to support you every step of the way. On behalf of my colleagues at Google, I wanted to thank you for taking the time to speak with us today and hear from us. And we look forward to actually advancing this conversation during our second webinar when we go deeper into the technologies. With that, thank you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So, look, we really do hope that you've enjoyed today's Privacy Sandbox webinar. We're very much about the session, and we'd be interested to hear whether a future session would be helpful.
네, 오늘 개인정보 보호 샌드박스 웨비나가 여러분들께도 유익한 시간이 되셨기를 바랍니다. 세션에 대한 여러분들의 피드백을 저희는 굉장히 소중하게 생각하고요. 향후 세션에서도 도움이 될지 여러분들의 의견을 또 듣고 싶습니다.
As you can see on your screen, there is a QR code. We would greatly appreciate it if you could take the next minute to answer a few simple questions.
스크린을 보시는 것처럼 화면에 QR코드가 띄워져 있습니다. 잠시만 시간을 주셔서 몇 가지 간단한 질문에 답변해 주시면 감사하겠습니다.
Hope you found the session informative and engaging.
네, 이번 세션이 여러분들께도 유익하고 흥미로운 세션이 되셨기를 바랍니다.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground today, but we know there's still more to learn. That's why we're excited to invite you back later at 1:30 p.m. Korea time for session 2 of the webinar.
네, 저희 오늘 굉장히 많은 내용을 다뤘는데요. 그래도 아직 배울 것이 많기 때문에 저희가 한국 시간 오후 1시 30분에 세션 2에 여러분들을 다시 초대를 할 예정입니다.
Yeah, so session 2 will do a deeper technical dive on the API technologies and how you can audit your website for third-party cookie usage.
그래서 이 세션 2 세션에서는 API에 대한 심층적인 기술 분석, 그리고 웹사이트에서 제3자 쿠키, 서드파티 쿠키 사용을 감시하는 방법에 대해서 알아볼 예정입니다.
Thank you, and we hope to see you later.
네, 잠시 후에 뵙도록 하겠습니다. 감사합니다.